More and more studies show that stress and other aspects of our mental health can affect our bodies and vice versa. A psychologist who lives in Westport has been training mental health professionals and writing about the connection between body and mind and health for decades. His newly released book, Use Your Body to Heal Your Mind, aims to help you release all barriers to health, healing, and happiness. Now, we are joined now by the author, psychologist Henry Grayson. Grayson founded the National Institute for the Psychotherapies and the Institute for Spirituality, Science, and Psychotherapy. He has also written the bestsellers Mindful Loving and The New Physics of Love. I could go on and on. His bio is a mile long, but we'll keep it at that for now. This new book, it confirms what a lot of people are starting to believe and agree with, even a lot of the MDs I talk to.
One problem, though, while we recognize that stress is a major cause of sickness, I think was in the Journal of Medicine says more than 80% of symptoms we take to a primary care physician are stress-related. Wow. But the problem is we don't really deal with the stress. We just say it's there, or the doctor might just give them a pill saying this will take care of it. Right. But that does not get to the source of the stress.
That's so interesting because so many people are taking a Xanax or whatever it may be to get through their stress.
But I'm concerned with that we get to the source of it. What causes the stress to begin with? And while certainly there's certain external events that can be stressful, I mean, if you get an automobile accident, that's stressful. Sure. Or if your spouse is dying in the hospital, that's stressful. Mm-hmm. But even more important, though, is what we think about those happenings. Because that can make the major difference. We can have some pretty horrific things, but if we learn a different way of thinking about those, a different way of interpreting them, a different way of reacting to them, a different way of being proactive with them, we reduce an enormous amount of that stress and the cortisol level goes way down.
This is interesting. Give us an example of how somebody, let's say they just lost a loved one, how might they better handle their stress so it doesn't manifest itself in such physical ways?
Well, to really answer that question would take a long time because there's so many ways. But I think one of the first things is I need to let myself cry. I need to let myself do full mourning, not be afraid to, even if I'm a man.
Don't put on a strong face.
Exactly. And to let the grief come through, let myself sob. It's important to release that. But once we've done that, we have to deal with the trauma of having lost a person as well. So there are two different parts of it, the trauma of it and the sadness and grief of it. And there are new methods now where we can release the effects of trauma, because trauma is one of the major causes of illness. If somebody has an adult trauma, they have a little sickness maybe within a day or two. And if they have a major trauma, they might have a major illness within a year or so. And if you have a bunch of childhood traumas growing up, if those are not cleared, you're set up to have a major illness in early adult life, statistically significant. Now, there are new ways that we can clear those traumas because what they are, a new way of looking at it from neuropsychology is to know it's just encoding some information in our survival brain, the reptilian brain that we took from the reptiles. And it's called the limbic system. And we encode that information. And it's designed to protect us. If we had a painful experience, it sends off an alarm if we see something similar to it. But the real problem is that it keeps going too active. One neuroscientist put it to me, it's about 15 times too active for our stage of evolution.
Oh, and therein lies the problem?
Therein lies the problem. So we need to do the equivalent of deleting an old program in our computers. And unwanted programs, we press the delete button. Now we have tools that can work to do something of the equivalent, not quite so fast, but we can delete that information that sets off the alarm in our limbic system and starts the cortisol, the other stress hormones flowing.
It makes so much sense, but Dr. Grayson, I think some people get frustrated that when they go into therapy, the therapist is digging and digging and digging up the old painful things. And at what point can you move on?
Well, the problem is talking about it is mostly not the cure for traumas. In fact, brain scan studies, even though I did talking therapy a good part of my career, now the studies show that too much talking about it will actually reactivate it and program it in further. And so we need to get beyond that, and that's where these new methods that have to do with bilateral stimulation of the brain, or the touching or tapping on some acupressure points, with statements of intention, just focusing briefly on what that trauma is, just feeling it for a moment, feeling it in the body for a moment, and then jumping right into the process for clearing. And I know if it's a recent trauma, like people who were in 9/11 in the tower that came down, and many of those came to me afterward. And in one session, we could clear out the effect of that trauma for most of them.
Isn't that interesting?
Now, the ones where you can't would be if that reactivated childhood traumas. And if you've got other traumas in childhood too, those need to be cleared as well,
So
and that makes it more complex.
To work through.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's why it's not everything just a real simple solution. But for the immediate ones, it is. And these are things I would use on myself.
It's interesting. In your book, you give people some insight as to how to evaluate their own needs in this department.
Well, I think that if we are feeling in our bodies a sense of stress, if I'm not feeling total peace and joy and happiness, if I'm feeling afraid, if I'm feeling scared, if I'm feeling angry, if I'm feeling resentful, those are signals. That's just language from the body telling me there's something else I need to deal with inside. And most of those come out of feelings of powerlessness, actually, feelings of littleness.
Isn't that interesting?
And so we're more traumatized when we're feeling powerless. If we feel like we can do something, fight or flight, we're less traumatized. But we shut down with the other. And yet we're doing that all the time in our reaction to difficult experiences.
And it's interesting to keep that in mind when you are meeting up with people who are acting all tough and perhaps bully-like.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's a lot of weakness going on behind it all.
Well, that reminds me too about how every thought actually affects our strength in our bodies.
That is fascinating.
Could I even demonstrate that with you for a minute?
Oh, no. We have to go to a commercial, but quickly.
Yeah, very quickly.
Okay.
You think sometime you just felt angry or resentful towards somebody?
Okay, you want me to think of that
now?
now?
Just think of it. You got one in mind?
Okay, got one.
Hold out your arm. Resist me pushing it down as much as you can.
Whoa.
Made it weak. Now
You're bringing me back to a moment, huh?
Now think of some time when you just felt love towards someone, and compassion, understanding.
Oh, okay.
You got one of those in mind?
Yeah.
And resist? Watch this. Can't even push it down with two hands.
Okay, wow.
That's the example of how quickly our thoughts are affecting our bodies.
An excellent
example. And making us weak or strong.
Wow. I am fascinated. Thank you so much. A lot of that is in here, and we'll have to have you back for more. That was an interesting demonstration because I consider myself quite strong.